Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for joining us again. I am here with the lovely Francine, and she's going to tell us her exciting story. So let me tell you really quick. First of all, Francine, thank you so much for being with us.
You are very, very welcome. Thank you.
Let me tell you how I got a hold of Francine, because we're just talking and she wrote up on the comments and in the DM like, listen, let people know that it is never too late. I left at 58. I'm in China and I'm teaching. I was like, oh, so you coming for an interview, right? And luckily she was gracious enough to come and chat with us. So Francine, for starters, tell us, where are you from?
Originally, I'm from New York.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my family's from the Caribbean, so I'm first generation American.
Okay.
But I was born and raised in New York.
Mm-hmm.
But moved to North Carolina with my husband, and we started our family there.
Okay. And so Caribbean, which part?
My mom is from Antigua and Barbuda,
Mm-hmm.
and my dad is from St. Thomas.
Awesome. All right. So tell me your living abroad story. Now, what I do know is you have kids and you've encouraged them to get out of the country, move abroad, and see great things. So why was that so important to you?
I was raised in New York City, which is pretty eclectic, a very diverse background. And I just wanted exposure for my children
Mm-hmm.
to everybody and everything.
Mm-hmm.
That was always important to me. So I encouraged them to travel, to learn languages. I introduced them to all kinds of things. My eldest daughter started taking Chinese at 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
I put her in Chinese language school. She was the only child looking like herself in there,
Mm-hmm.
but she was there.
Mm-hmm.
And when she was about 5, she then said, Mommy, she took my hand in her face and she said, Mommy, Chinese is your dream.
Ah.
And I looked at this little 5-year-old and I said, oh, okay. She took Chinese dance to appease me somehow, but went on later. She now studies French. She now lives in France. She's in France even as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of started there. My husband and I talked about it, and we wanted our children to learn 2 languages, Chinese and Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Chinese because particularly Mandarin, because we felt like there were 1 point however many billion people.
Mm-hmm.
That's a language that we felt was important
Mm-hmm.
to learn. And then Spanish because that's pretty much our second language here in America. So those were the 2 languages that we wanted them to learn. So when we put her, the eldest daughter, in school, we put her in a Spanish immersion.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, she went on to French,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and eventually to France. So my youngest started out learning Turkish in her school.
Wow.
And from Turkish, she went to high school where they didn't offer it, so she took Spanish. And when she went to university, she took Portuguese.
Mm-hmm.
That she's held on to is the Portuguese. The one that my eldest has held on to is her French.
Awesome.
And then there was me.
You know, it wasn't until I moved to Portugal that I was really kind of, really embarrassed that I only knew how to speak one language, and I chopped that language up completely. But everyone I met spoke a minimum of 3 languages, and I was like, gosh, I really need to get my life together.
That's an American thing, though. When I initially went to China, there are so many Russians. There are lots of expats, but the Russian expats, none of them spoke less than 3 languages.
Mm-hmm.
I met many Chinese who spoke more than 1 language, including English. And here we were, the Americans over there, and we spoke English.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a background in Spanish. I took a little French, so I can be okay in those languages, but more understanding than speaking because I didn't always have the confidence. But I was a little embarrassed too because, wow, these people, they speak all these languages. And then the African people, of course, came with multiple languages as well.
Right.
So here we were Americans and we're these big deals, or so we thought. And none of us, there were a few who might have spoken Chinese that they, you know, picked up as they got over there. But for the majority of us, no. We spoke one language, so I absolutely understand that. But I'm working on my Chinese, so I'm good.
That's good. Like,
I feel a little better.
When I would get in the Ubers and they would say, "Oh, how long have you been here?" And as it progressed, like 5 or 6 months, and I still don't know the language, and I could see like the disappointment in their face, and I'm like, okay. And now I just started, I've only been here. Because I'm so embarrassed. Anyway, so tell me about your first moving abroad experience. When was the first time that you moved abroad?
The first time I moved abroad was February of 2019. Okay. And the reason that I hesitated, because as a child, I was sent to the Caribbean. And I lived there for 3 to 5 years. And then, of course, we spent all of our summers. But my move, myself, me making the effort, was to China, February 2019.
So that's recent. And so tell us about that experience. What made you say, I'm going to move to China?
My story is a little bit different from most, in that my story was I started wanting to go abroad a long time ago. It's been years that I wanted to. I've been thinking about it forever, but maybe about 2013 is when I started to really think, this is something that I really want to do. Initially, I was going to just jump in an RV and go around the country, hit all 50 states. I don't know how the RV was going to get to Hawaii, but I was going to hit all 50 states. Okay. And then I started thinking, you know, like I said, I encourage my girls to go abroad. So my oldest started university 2013.
Okay.
That first summer after her first year, she went to Florence and Paris and Birmingham, England. And I was like, And she said something to me. This is my oldest daughter. And if I start crying, please forgive me because this is my story. But my oldest daughter said to me, when she came home from school after the first semester, she said, "Mom, I am not going to let my fear rule my life." This is my daughter telling this to me. And I thought, okay, she said, I may be scared of something, but I'm going to try it and I'm going to do it anyway. And I thought, wow. And, you know, out of the mouths of babes, she wasn't a baby at that point, still my baby, but she was, you know, she said these words and that resonated with me. And I just thought, you know what? You're going to be 60 anyway. You're going to be 55. You're going to be whatever age you're going to be. But are you going to get to 60 and say, I wish I had? Why didn't I do that? Are you going to get to 60 with regrets? Or are you going to get to 60 and say, you know what? I did it. And like I said, her words resonated with me, and that was kind of the impetus. I was a stay-at-home mom with my girls, and by the when I homeschooled also, and when my oldest was ready for high school, they fired me. They didn't want to homeschool anymore. My daughters fired me from homeschooling. They wanted to go to school. And they were Montessori babies, and Maria Montessori says, follow the child. So you follow the child. And that was my philosophy, follow the child, because if they're where they want to be doing what they want to do, then it's going to be a better situation and they'll take in what they need to take in. So when they said, I want to go to school, it was like, follow the child. Oh, okay, they want to go to school. So how can I tell them no? So I allowed them to go to school. I wanted to go abroad when we were homeschooling them, but they weren't interested.
Mm-hmm.
So I always said, well, when they go on their own, then I will go and I can take my trip and do what I need to do then. I can do me.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan went away to school. She told me that she was no longer going to be afraid. No, not that she wouldn't be afraid, but that she was no longer going to allow her fear to rule who she was or to run her life. I took those words to heart, and I just started looking into things. What is it that you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And going abroad has always been a thing, because even when we were homeschooling, I wanted to do the 50 states, and then I wanted to go to China for 6 months, even back then.
Mm-hmm.
And that all started when I read a book called China Wakes.
Mm-hmm.
And this was before I had children. And I told my
Is it
husband
Wake?
about it.
W-A-K-E-S?
Wakes.
Okay.
China Wakes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was written by a husband and wife team. They were New York Times foreign correspondents.
Mm-hmm.
Cheryl Wu Dunn
Mm-hmm.
was the woman's name. And I don't remember her husband's name, but they wrote the book as a partnership. And it just talked about how China was a sleeping giant and how they were coming to life. And I guess that was like the very beginning of like the middle class coming to be in China and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what got me interested in China. And so now my daughter's saying, well, I'm not going to let my fear rule me. And I'm thinking, well, I wanted to go in the RV of the 50 states and then go to China for 6 months and just live and then go on with my life. So now this started me thinking about all of those things again. As I did that, it was like, I also at a similar time started teaching here in our city, and I did a lot of ESL. That was interesting to me. I did exceptional children, so children with various behavioral and developmental. I started working with them, and I worked with children who were also gifted. Okay, and anyway, so I had some background experience with that because of my
Did
own
you have to get
kids.
certified, or are you able to do that with like how
I was substitute teaching.
Okay.
I was substitute teaching, but those are the assignments that I chose to pick up. And I really, really fell for the ESL. My degree is in fine arts. So it had nothing to do with that, but my background had always been, my family's somewhat eclectic. We've got a little bit of everybody, and if they weren't part of the family, they married into the family. So it's just a big mix. So I've always been interested. My cousin's wife is Filipino, and she would say when they had their daughter, she said, well, I don't want my daughter to learn my language because nobody speaks my language. And I would get upset with her. Do you know how many people would be so excited to have a second language, and you can give this to her? And anyway, long story short, her daughter's fluent in Tagalog and English, and her younger children are not. They understand, but they don't speak. But the oldest, she definitely, is thoroughly immersed in Filipino culture and language. So anyway, all of that was just, I guess, was helped to build up my interest in being with people from different cultures and learning about different cultures. My parents were always involved with people of different cultures when they came up here. And so that's what I knew. And that's what I tried to pass on to my kids. And now it was my turn to really immerse myself. And so I told my kids, I said, okay, once you two are out of college, then it's my turn. And my girls are 4 years apart. But anyway, so my youngest daughter, I said, okay, I'm giving you 2 years. 2 years after you're in college and you're getting yourself settled, after that second year, then it's my turn to go. I didn't do it. I waited until just before she graduated. So I left in February and she graduated in May. When I started substitute teaching and I was working with all of these people, I ended up teaching Chinese for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
I had no background other than when my daughter was taking it in Chinese, but I was a substitute teacher, and so you get put into the situations. I was with the Chinese program at the school where I was working, had 2 Chinese teachers. They overlap the way the program works. So you have 2 every year, but one is new and one is old. Mm-hmm. So the old one had left, and so they were waiting for a new one to come in. With visa issues and what have you, it took a minute. So they needed a second body in that classroom. So I became that body. And I watched everything that they did, and I learned what they learned. Then that first teacher became ill, and she was gone for a week. And that left me because there was nobody else. So I just taught them what she taught them. And what I remembered from, the time I had spent with her. So it wasn't like it was real baby Chinese. Hello, goodbye, So, but we, during that time, became closer and closer and started talking. And actually, I started looking into the EPIC program.
EPIC, E-P-I-C?
E-P-I-K.
I-K, okay.
Which is educational, oh gosh, I don't remember exactly, but it's a program out of Korea. So the K is for Korea, where teachers come in and teach English, but it's a specific program.
Okay.
And so I was looking into the EPIC program. I was looking into going to South Korea.
Okay.
And when it came time for me to go to South Korea, for me to fill out the application, I needed a certification that I would not have during that time. So I was talking to one of the ESL teachers who is Korean, and to the Chinese teacher, and saying, I missed it for this year. I won't be able to go. This is back in 2018. I'm not going to be able to go to Korea. And I didn't want to wait. And so I was lamenting, and they were they were consoling me. And then the Chinese teacher took me aside, and she said, Francine, my school is looking, because she was a university professor in China, but she was here in the US working with our students. And she said, my school is looking for English teachers. Would you be interested? And I said, yes. I mean, I didn't have, she said, you should come. She said, come to China. I said, okay. And essentially, I had a job at that point.
Okay.
I told her that I was interested. She talked to whoever she had to talk to. They contacted me, and that was it. There was no interview. There was no application process. So that's why I say my situation was very different. But I feel like the more you talk about what it is that you want to do, the more the universe conspires with you to get that done. And that was it. Now, the issue was my visa. My visa process took about a year.
Wow.
Nobody's process takes that long. No, it was a comedy of errors. It was a comedy of errors.
Wow.
And so the person at the university I was going to, we found out later, was up for a promotion. She was pretty much focused on that. So I would send my information to her because they told me they would take care of everything. We'll ask you for what we need and you send it. So I would send her my information, and she would, maybe a couple weeks later, because this is out of the country and everybody says you have to be patient. You have to be patient. And I'm like, okay. So maybe a couple weeks later, maybe 3 weeks later, she'd come back and she'd say, oh, okay, can you send me such and such a document? And I'd say, oh, I sent it to you, but that's okay. I'll send it again. We went through this for maybe 3 or 4 months. Different documents. All the apostilles and all the authentications and all the notarizations, I knew nothing about. The reason that she was rejecting the paperwork, which she didn't explain to me, was because they weren't apostilled or notarized or authenticated. So they weren't what she needed. But she never said to me, she would say, that's not it, but she would never say what. I joined a group called Brothers and Sisters of China.
Mm-hmm. You did
on Facebook. On Facebook. So I had been on that group for a while and just following and, listening as people were doing things. This one particular thread happened to come up. This is 7 months. This is in June or July of 2018. Mm-hmm. And this thread comes up and a woman is saying, I'm trying to get my things authenticated. It's a very long story that she wrote. And then all these responses. And people are explaining, well, you have to have this notarized and you need to get this authenticated. And I'm following this thread and I finally wait a minute. So then I write my own soliloquy of what was going on with me. And school starts in August. And this is June. And so I write my story. And then people start responding, no, sweetheart, you need to go here and you need to take this paper here and you need to. Prior to that, I knew nothing. So that's truly when it started. That process took a very, very long time. I learned to be patient. By the time I got to China, I was ready for anything.
Right. And that's a really good point, because I think for those individuals who the visa thing is a big thing, regardless of what country you go to. Each country, each specific country is going to have their own requirements as to what you need to do in order to stay there. So usually there's a tourism, usually there is some form of entrepreneurship, business type of visa, and then there's the work visa. So we spoke about this in other interviews with other people. If you have a work visa, the company has to sponsor you. And if it's in a different language, which you bring up a great point, sometimes the communication is going to be a little off, but usually that country needs proof that the documents that you are sending them are real. And so the apostle and the notary is usually necessary, I would assume, in most visa processes, in which you're going to stay there for a longer period of time. Of course, not necessarily with tourist visas, but definitely for work visas and
this is for residency.
So consider that if you hear this story and maybe you're having some issues, just remember, in most of the things they were going to say, either get the apostle, which I didn't know what that was either. I had never heard that word until it was time to get my visa for Portugal. So I did know how to do it. And in each state, if you're coming from the United States, it's different. And because I lived in a tri-state area of DC didn't do FBI they didn't apostle FBI paperwork. They did every other paperwork, the place I was going to go, but FBI. And that's the one I needed to get apostle. So listen, that is definitely a thing. I'm glad you brought that up. So for those of you who are trying to get a visa, just please know that the country is usually going to want to see that these forms are authentic. So you decided to go to China. And what was that process like?
The process of moving to China was, once my visa was done, it was relatively easy. I, again, was on this site that was saying, okay, if you're Black and you're coming to China, you better make sure you have your hair products and you better make sure you have your makeup and you better make sure you have your lotions and what have you, because everything's got skin whiteners in it. And I'm thinking, I don't want skin whiteners. Okay, so I packed my suitcase. So I packed up. I don't know if I mentioned that I left my husband and my 2 children.
So how does that even work? Did you sit them all down and was like, look, mama out, I'm leaving?
You know what? No. What I did was I pretty much kept it to myself because I didn't want to get everybody on board with this thing that I was doing that didn't happen. So through all this year, I was going through all of these changes and trying to figure out, what was going on with the visa and learning to be patient. I didn't want them to be a part of that process because I felt like my leaving was going to be a whole thing. So I didn't include them initially. And when I first started to include them, it was my children that I started talking to. And then they were concerned that I wasn't going to tell their dad. because I wasn't saying anything to him, also because I didn't want to get him involved in a process yet.
Mm-hmm.
That that said, okay, I'm going to do this, and then it doesn't happen.
Okay.
So I started with my children, and I did tell them, and they were concerned. I explained, of course, I'm going to tell Daddy. It was far enough in advance. It wasn't like it was 2 weeks or a couple months before. It was
Right.
far enough in advance. And then I talked to my husband, and he was not concerned because we were empty nesters.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest with you, my feeling, even to this day, is that there was a sense of relief a little bit on his part, in that now that the kids are gone, I don't have to entertain her. She can figure something to do for herself. And he never said those words. Those are my words for him. But I kind of felt like there was a little bit of relief as far as that was concerned. But he was also excited for me. Mm-hmm. And the kids were supportive of my going. So that was a relief once I finally, was ready to share that with them. Look, this is what I'm looking into. And this is what I'd like to do. So he was excited that I was going to be able to do something like that. And he didn't have to be involved. And they were excited because their mom was doing what she needed to do. They were kind of proud of me.
What kind of conversation do you have to have with your partner when you're getting ready to move to a whole nother country?
He's not new here. He knows me. He knows that he knew that this was something that I had an interest in. I wanted to do it with my family, but they were never interested in it. So I don't think it was as much of a surprise to him as people might think. The fact that I actually did it might have been the surprise, not that I wanted to do it. The relationship that I have with my husband is, he would never say to me, you can't do that, or I don't want you to do that. He responded as I would have expected, which was, okay, yeah, that sounds exciting. What else he might have been thinking, I don't know. But what he said or how he responded to me was in a way that I would have wanted him to, which was simply to say, I'm excited for you. That's wow. The conversation was simply, well, I was thinking about going to Korea, but I think I have a chance to go to China now, and explain the situation of how it came about and what happened at school and what have you. And he was like, yeah, one of the things he said was, oh, you're going to love that. I mean, like, he knows me.
And again, this is your husband, so you guys know each other, and how people, so I get that. You're talking to
We've been married, it's 26 years now. Oh, yeah. So we're also, like I said, new empty nesters, and kind of looking at, oh, wait a minute, what's your name again? Oh, I remember you from, right? Okay. So it was that, and trying to get used to being just us again, and, with the girls mostly gone. So I feel like this just gave us some time or a minute to even figure out what it was that we really wanted for going forward in our lives. I also felt like once we were apart, that I'd be able to sit and think, what do you truly want to do for you? And that he'd be able to sit and think, what do you truly want to do for you? And that's always been important to me, for him to be able to do that, because as a stay-at-home mom, he was the one out working. I got to, I was with my kids, and then we homeschooled, and I was with my kids, and, I always wanted to, we go on vacations a lot of times, and while a few times he would go with us, the majority of the time it was me and the girls, because he was working. So I was looking for something where where he could really make some decisions about think about what he wanted, not what he wanted for us, or not what we wanted and wanted him to participate in. So that was something else. The other thing is I watch a lot of HGTV. So that HGTV, House Hunters International, was a big thing in my house. And during that year, my husband had come to me prior to me letting them know that I was working on going to China. He was constantly looking over my shoulder and watching these shows as well. And he one day came up to me and said, you know, Panama and Ecuador and Honduras, there were like these places. He was saying, you know, they've got these really large expat communities of retirees. And then he started talking about Mexico more recently, but he was saying that he wanted to retire. He said we could retire and live like, you know, like kings somewhere else. And he started saying that. So that was interesting because prior to that, that was not something that he would talk about. So I was like, okay, because my goal was to go to China, teach 2-3 years. I was thinking, and then while I was there, travel all over Southeast Asia, Oceania, and work my way back this way so that when he was ready, not so that, but, and it would coincide with when he was ready to retire and go, then we'd be ready because I'd be back on this side. Because I have elderly parents, I have disabled sister. So, you know, I wanted to work my way back this way so that I could get where I needed to go if needed. So it was kind of all falling together in my mind as to how I wanted this to work. Once I got to China, I was so busy, I imagine, that I was just so busy being excited about being in this new place, being excited that I actually did this. And I actually, through all of that, there was so many times when I didn't see it happening, but I would say, Francine, put one foot in front of the other. Just keep going, one foot in front of the other, and eventually you'll get there. Still not 100% sure that it would happen, but I kept putting that one foot in front of the other. And so when I touched down in China, it was like, I'm actually here. It was amazing. So I lived on that for a long time. For a long time. I was just so excited to be there. Everything was new. Everything was a learning, was learning all these new things. Fortunately for me, that teacher who was teaching with us had gone back home. She met me at the airport.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so I had at least one English speaking person that I could talk to. Even though I was in this foreign country where I did not speak the language, I mean, I knew ni hao, zaijian. I mean, I knew a little bit, but not enough. I really wanted to be a part of that community. And it came to the point where they knew me. So I couldn't go by and not say hello to people after a while because they expected it. And I was happy and they would smile. So, and then I felt part of a community because, I knew that I would see these people as I was leaving to go to work in the morning. And I knew my vegetable stand person and the stationery place where I got my copies made. They would allow me to speak Chinese to them. What little I knew. Not that I could respond if they responded, but they would allow me to say the words. And they would wait for me. They were very patient with me. The dry cleaning person. And I just had these people who I saw all the time and who were used to me and would smile and have these huge smiles when I would walk by. And I loved being in China. I really did. And I've heard horror stories that others have had. And I'm really sorry to hear that. That just wasn't my experience at all. I mean, I learned how to take the bus and people would stare at me. I remember this older woman, okay, than me, a Chinese woman. She was insisting that I sit down. I don't know what it was, but she was, and I was like, no, 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 no. Or I would give my seat to someone, and it was a big deal. Everybody was, I don't know what the expectation, as a foreigner, I don't think they had the expectation that I would do that, or I don't know. But it was always something, but it was nice. It was friendly. It was never, I remember one of my first nights in China, I'd met people in groups, and there were some people who lived in Zhengzhou, which is where I went. And so this one young lady came, and she lived an hour away, but she came to meet me that first weekend, and she took me out, and I met 7 Black people in Zhengzhou, China. Wait, what? And 3 of them were from North Carolina.
Wow.
So it was like, wow. She was from California. But so I went out with her that Friday night. And by the time I got back to the campus, it was 3:00 in the morning. The gates were locked. And she had put me in a taxi to take me back to the campus. So I called her up, and I'm like, the gates were locked. I think I'm going to have to climb this fence to get in. And there were some boys there also who belonged on campus, students. And so I called her up, and she said, no. She said, you can knock on the gate on the, there's like a gatehouse.
Think about that part. You about to be straight go and
to jump over the fence, because I don't even know what it is. She said, no, there's somebody in the gatehouse 24 hours.
That's hilarious.
So I said, oh, okay. So I go and I knock on the door, and somebody actually comes to the door, and I'm like, oh, he's there. She's like, okay. And he recognized me, and he was letting me in. But by the time he got to the door and got his key and all of that, 2 of the boys had jumped the fence. All this time, the taxi driver wouldn't leave.
Oh, wow.
And again, I mean, I'm sorry, I get emotional, but he was waiting to make sure that I got inside, and he refused to leave until he knew that I was safe. And it was, I'm sorry with the crying, but people were just so warm and helpful to me. Maybe they looked at this old woman and said, she doesn't know what the heck is going on. Let me help her. But yeah, I mean, I didn't have those negative experiences, and it really makes me sad when I hear people, those stories. I mean, it was amazing. It was amazing for me. I had a Friendsgiving with 17 people. No.
Yeah, I did that too. Yeah.
13 people at my house. And so 3 Chinese, 7 Americans, that's 10, and then 3 Black women of the diaspora. So we had 1 from England, 2 from Jamaica. Actually 4, because we had 1 who was from either Cameroon or the Congo. But I mean, we had this eclectic group around my turkey that I found in China and made, and everybody brought something. So we had a really nice Friendsgiving, which, like I said, my children say that I will talk to a wall, that I'll make friends with whatever. So, and I think that that's what happens. And I think if you're open and you're just, that you'll be okay. But there's so many of us who are out of the country right now, that all kinds of things are opening up. So we'll see. But my alternative is to go to Mexico and hang out for a while. Until China opens up. I was thinking about Vietnam, because I did get to go visit Vietnam in July of last year. I went on holiday, but they just shut down again. Vietnam just recently shut down again. So, you go from leaving abroad to now, let me just jump to these various places. I love it. Because I found communities in these places too. I found Black women in these places. I found Black women when I went to Vietnam for 2 weeks, and I went to 2 Sunday dinners because Black digital nomads was setting up Sunday dinners, and I met all these people.
We will do a Sunday dinner, honey. It don't matter where you are. We will throw Sunday dinner together. Honey, I done been this. We will do a Sunday dinner. I love it.
Yes, I went to South Korea, and of course, I met a sorority sister of mine there, and it's like we're everywhere, and if you're looking for community, you will find it.
Yeah. So, how do you think moving abroad has changed your perspective on life?
I found out that I'm even stronger than I thought I was. It's a scary thing to go to a new country and not know their customs or their culture or the thing with China is here in America, we think we know the Chinese, but we don't. And once you get there, then you figure that out. And so it expanded me in those ways. So things that I thought I knew, that I really didn't. Yeah, I feel like I've grown. I'm braver. Like, I don't feel like there's anywhere in the world that I can go to that I'm not going to find a level of comfort for myself. So you have to find your way. And I took the bus and got lost time and time again, but I figured it out. I would go to the store and I'm trying to buy meat. And the woman says to me, how much? And I'm like, this much? Because I don't know. At the time, I didn't know how to say, 1 kilo,
Right.
or
Kilo
whatever.
was a new thing for me. I'm like, well, we talking about drugs? Like, this the whole metric system changed, and I didn't think about that same thing until I was in the market. And they were like, and I go, I don't know what the conversion is. I'm breaking out my phone, trying to figure out how much.
And they would laugh at me, and I would laugh with them because I was like, okay. But I learned eventually how to measure and how to figure and, all of those things. But they were patient with me too. So, it was nice. And I'm real proud that I was able to move myself somewhere and create a life for myself. I was looking for a level of autonomy. I was a stay-at-home mom. I had these children that I had to, that I was responsible for. And I had this husband that I, was with and needed to communicate and figure things with. And I got to China and I could make choices about what I was going to eat or how I was going to order my food or how I would get somewhere or where I would go or whatever it was. And it's new for me, relatively. I've been with my husband. We've been married for 26 years, but we've been together for 31 now. So, wait a minute, 33. We've been together for 33 years. We've been married for 26, but we've known each other for 33 years. So. But yeah, it was a different thing being on my own and making decisions for me and not having to consider other people. That was a big thing. And I was looking forward to that. So, yeah.
And so specifically, I always ask my guests, like, what advice would you give people who are considering moving abroad? But I want you to speak to the person who, I get a lot of emails of people like, oh, I'm coming. I'm when I retire in 10 years, and they're like in their 50s or however they want to do it. And it's just like, what would you tell people? Like, what would be your advice?
I started watching this woman on television, another YouTuber, and she has a philosophy that she went on vacation with her parents, and her parents are retired, and they went and they enjoyed themselves. They had a good time, but they had some aches and pains, and they had, little bumps and things. And she looked at them and she thought they waited like most of us do. And this woman's philosophy is, why wait? What I'm saying is, what I heard her say. I believe in this already, but she articulated it. Don't wait. Do it now. There is no reason for you to put it off. Mm-hmm. I was 56 when I formally started this process. Mm-hmm. I was 57 when I left for China. Mm-hmm. I had a birthday while I was there, so I'm 58 now. Mm-hmm. Do it now. It's okay. It is not. Okay, two things I want to say. If you're listening to this and this is something that you truly want to do it now, period. But don't allow yourself to get caught up in, oh, I wish I would have done this when I was younger. Because there were times when I told myself, well, you know, I'm getting old and yeah, well, no, I'm sorry. That's not even true because I don't consider myself old. But I think, you know, is it too late for me to do so-and-so? It's never too late. It's never too late. Like I said, I started this process at 56. I've met people, other expats while I was abroad who are in their 60s. The majority of the people I met were much younger than I. Mm-hmm. But I have a good friend, one of my best friends in China is my daughter's age. And she says to me, oh, I forget that I forget how old you are. I just think if you want to do it, do it. It's not too late to do it. Don't convince yourself that it's too late to do it. I told myself my children are now on their own, so now it's my turn. And I took my turn. Mm-hmm. Fortunately for me, my children are very proud of me, very supportive of me. My husband was proud of me. He was supportive of me. Everybody that I told that I was doing this was excited. Mm-hmm. Nobody said, aren't you a little old for this? Nobody. The only person who said anything was the doctor who said, did you get your husband's permission? But aside from him, and even he, when I went back to him for my checkup this past January, for my physical, he says, Francine, you went to China. I said, yes. He said, no, you went to China. I said, I told you I was going to China. That's why I was doing all that. He said, I know, but you went to China. He said, people talk about stuff, but they don't do it. He said, you just up and booked and went to China. And I thought, yes. He said, I didn't believe you were going to do it. Mm. Is what he never told me that. But that's what he said, I didn't think you were going to do it. I was like, I was confused because I didn't understand. But he's also the one who said, well, you know, did you get permission from Dwayne? So maybe I should listen to what he has to say too. But he just didn't get that it was going to happen. He just thought I was talking and he was listening. He was polite, but he didn't really think it was going to happen. And it did. And he's proud of me, you know. So yeah, and he uses me as an example to other people, not necessarily to go abroad, but anything that you think, because everybody doesn't have the same dream. Anything that you think that you want to do, it's not too late. Go out there and do it. Mm-hmm. You'll find a way. I love it. Francine, thank you so much for talking with us and sharing your story. We really appreciate it. Oh, thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Absolutely. Again, guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of Experiences Living Abroad. And until next time.